So there's a big Senate primaries and congressional primaries in the state of Tennessee yesterday, and they turned out to be way more exciting than anyone expected. So on the Democratic side, this is not a race that was on my radar whatsoever. This is for an open seat in the United States Senate. There's a DSCC-backed candidate named James Mackler, raised more than $2 million, seemed like he was just going to roll into victory here. But surprise, surprise, Marquita Bradshaw, who raised a grand total of, according to the last filing report, $8,000. $8,000. That's essentially no money versus $2 million. Completely upended the race. Shocked everyone. She's a leftist. She's backed by the Democratic Socialists of America. She supports a Green New Deal. She supports Medicare for all. She's an activist, an environmentalist. Let's take a listen to what Marquita said last night.
It's time for us to move towards the future and lay racism to bed so we can move into the ingenuity and creativity that we all deserve as Americans working together. My name is Marquita Bradshaw, and I am the Democratic nominee.
Just unbelievable. I mean, these are the things that you get so excited, like what still makes me love politics so much. She came out of nowhere. No money, shocked everyone. Has to be a huge embarrassment for Chuck Schumer and for the DSCC. And by the way, the Schumer-backed candidate, if these results hold, he didn't even get second. He got third. Another African-American woman named Robin Kimbrough, who is an attorney and an activist and also on the left and a Black Lives Matter advocate, she got second. So just mind-blowing results here. And look, obviously, Democrat in Tennessee has a very tough road to hoe here coming into November. It is an open seat, so there's not an incumbent, so that helps things a little bit. But this is a stunning result in a week that already had the stunning result of Cori Bush upending Lacey Clay. So there is something major afoot in this country right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, especially the Democratic establishment would be very wise to actually figure out what is brewing. Because, yes. I mean, this is
They're not going to. No. Spoiler alert, but go ahead.
It's not because it's not for lack of trying, right? Like, these things happen and they realize we have to figure out what the heck is going on, but they're not capable because they're not capable of sort of dispensing with their biases and dispensing with all of the preconceived notions that they have about the far left, whatever it is. But this also sets up a really interesting contrast in the Tennessee Senate race between Bill Hagerty, who we'll talk more about, a Trump Republican, really. I mean, someone who has gone to great lengths to look like he's an ally of President Donald Trump. He had the Trump endorsement. With someone like Marquita Bradshaw, who is an authentic working class leftist, that is a fascinating race. It's not, I mean, she's not going to win, but that's an interesting race.
Well, let's talk about the Republican side because it's funny too that you call him a Trump Republican because it's a little bit questionable. Even though he's backed by Donald Trump, it gets to the point of like, what does that mean? So the guy who won on the Republican side, let's go ahead and throw this up. Bill Hagerty, he was a close ally. He was a private equity executive, close buddies with Mitt Romney. I think he was Romney's like campaign finance co-chair back during Romney's presidential campaign. So private equity buddies there, you know, two rich guys. So in the Trump era, he has basically thrown his old friend Mitt Romney under the bus. Romney's PAC sent him money. He sent it back. This has become an issue in the primary campaign. His opponent, Manny Sethi, who is also, you know, a wealthy guy. He's comes from a family of immigrants. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He was trying to claim the mantle. I'm the real Trump candidate, like the authentic Trump candidate. So Hagerty, though, ended up being Trump's ambassador to Japan. He gets the Trump endorsement. But look, this is like a standard issue corporate Republican through and through. But in the Trump era, he has thrown it all in with rhetorically supporting President Trump, even though he doesn't support really the direction of the policy that at least Trump ran on. I would say that it's consistent with how Trump has ultimately governed. But we've seen this in a couple of races now play out. You also think about Alabama, right? Jeff Sessions was a true sort of the original Trumpist, really, in a lot of ways. I mean, the first guy to endorse him. They have a personal falling out over the handling of Russiagate. Trump endorses against him Tommy Tuberville, who's standard issue corporate Republican, but ends up being the Trump Republican, even though it's counter to everything that Trump claimed to stand for back in 2016.
Well, it's because Trumpism is fundamentally about loyalty, right?
Personality and loyalty, yeah.
It's about personality and loyalty, and ideology is second to all of that, which is not what people, I mean, when Donald Trump is sort of depicted as a hard ideologue, that's always second to Donald Trump. It's downstream of loyalty to him, and that's Trumpism is fundamentally about loyalty, and that's what we're seeing with Bill Hagerty in these races where the so-called Trump Republican wins or is backed by Trump or not backed by Trump. It's just all it does is confirm that. It's interesting because this race, like his Romney ties were used against him.
Yeah.
And Sethi was trying to run really hard as like you said, the more authentic Trump Republican, all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, I imagine Hagerty is one of those guys. I don't know. I imagine he's one of there's a class of Republicans who are more establishment, sort of, I shouldn't even say establishment, just like normal Republicans.
Yeah, Chamber of Commerce type.
Yeah, Chamber Republicans, and they're pleased, I guess, with the net impact of the Trump presidency for their agenda in terms of foreign policy and tax cuts and everything. Privately, they probably tell you, yeah, like a lot of this is crazy.
Yeah, but they don't like him personally.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he cut corporate taxes and he did all the things that they really wanted to. And I think it's really interesting in terms of this question of, okay, if Trump loses this time around, what does the future of the Republican Party look like? Like, what do people take from the Trump era? And in a lot of ways, in Alabama, by backing Tuberville, in this race, by backing Hagerty, in Kansas, by staying out. And look, and by the way, I don't like any of these people, but this is, let's just be clear about this. But by not backing Kobach, who's like clearly the true Trump Republican, and allowing Roger Marshall, who is the, again, Chamber of Commerce type Republican, to win, and then throwing all in behind him, saying this isn't the candidate that Democrats wanted to run against, which is true. But Trump himself is sort of complicit in recreating the Republican Party of old by getting behind these, Mitt Romney type Republican candidates.
Loyalists.
Over loyalty, over ego, over all of those like personal characteristics, which I think, to your point, really does expose the fact that anything that he said ideologically, like that was always way secondary down the list to whatever his sort of personal proclivities and personal relationships and who hurt his feelings and who, sucked up to him the best. That ultimately is what has governed what will follow Trump.
I think you just raised a central question of the Trump presidency. And I think one of the biggest questions of the Trump presidency is what happens after Trump. And we really don't have a clear answer to that. But something so interesting is exactly what you just said. By elevating someone like Tommy Tuberville over Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions is ideologically a MAGA Republican. He is a Trump Republican to his core. He was Trump before Trump.
Yeah, he's the original.
Right. And Donald Trump could have helped him win that seat. He could have had a Senate vote that was this original MAGA ideologue. And instead, it's someone else who was loyal to Trump or who Trump perceived to have been loyal to him. So this is the question. Tuberville goes hard on like the MAGA line too. So what's the balance here? Do you want someone who speaks like a Trump Republican and maybe votes differently, or do you want somebody who votes differently, who votes the MAGA agenda? That's the question, and we don't know exactly how this is all going to gel after the Trump presidency, but we're seeing evidence.
Well, you think about just these 3 Senate seats in Alabama, Kansas, and Tennessee, 3 states that Republicans will likely easily win.
Yes.
Right? And even if Kobach was the nominee in Kansas, he still would be a favorite, even though he managed to lose a governor's race there, despite having a massive partisan advantage. But you just think about those 3 seats. Instead of Kobach, Sessions, and Manny Sethi, who really actually believe in what Trump said was his agenda back in 2016, or at least some portions of it, you end up instead with these very standard issue George W. Bush type Republicans. Mm-hmm. So just those 3 switches alone make a massive impact in terms of what the Republican Party is going to look like, whether Trump is president or not, post-2020. So, and the fact that he is integral in creating that dynamic it really does say a lot.
What you're saying is so interesting because his involvement in it is the key point here,
Yeah.
right? And that what he's doing right now is helping shift Trumpism from an ideology, which he has. I mean, you can talk about the Trump doctrine in really specific ways, and on some issues maybe not so much, but on some issues absolutely you can talk about it in really specific ways, and even just the attitude of like an insurgent, and that's someone like Manny Sethi, but how he himself is making Trumpism an ideology that prizes loyalty over policy is fascinating. And I don't think it's something that he would actually dispute. I think he would defend that. I think Donald Trump would defend doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure that he would. He's not one to admit mistakes. All right, we're going to have more Rising for you after this.